My name is Sphelele Gumede, aka Ellsphee. Welcome to my masterclass. My background really started in Duzuma. The inspiration or the thing that was the push for me to do it was really my great-grandmother, funnily enough. I think for her, she was trying to get me out of trouble. I think she was just like, there's nothing for you to do, so, and you're gonna be in my way as I'm doing my cleaning, so here's a piece of paper. As far as my career goes, I studied animation, but I've got no art school background whatsoever, so I do what I do just purely off what I feel. So I really just follow that and try to get better at that. I'm currently in the advertising industry, but my start point was TV, interestingly enough. I did some work for TV shows, I did some work for TV commercials. I think for me, having done animation, it was like a natural kind of like a progression, right? One of my earlier jobs was working for a TV show which was going to be on SABC3. Called Sphelele. This is like a few years ago, and whilst I was working on that particular show, I did some work on shows like 50/50. I did some Mnet related TV shows, which was just through that production company that gave me a shot, and I just kind of never looked back from then on. From then on, I went on to fully work on TV commercials, and now progressed to advertising and thinking about the big idea and so forth. What I do as far as illustration goes is something that I do exclusively for myself. Having been in the TV and production and post-production industry for a bit, I found that a lot of what I was doing was influenced by money and what everyone else wanted. I think as artists and creatives, at a certain point you want to figure out what it is that you wanted, that thing that made you want to do what you do in the first place. And the truth of the matter is none of us, I would hope not anyway, do what we do because it was influenced by money. The fact is you did it before, so you knew whether you could get paid for it. And that's the truth for myself. So a few years ago, I found myself in a weird position where a lot of what I was doing was very influenced by money, and a lot of the happiness was being sucked out of it. So I had to go back and figure out what it was that I wanted to do in the first place. And that's how I started illustrating again. I got into it, and that became the thing which was my avenue outside of the industry world, and that's why I do what I do. I started working in just traditional paper, pencils, kind of like formats. But I think, with the world that we live in, it's almost like dangerous for you not to get into the digital kind of way of working. So, and that was a bigger kind of learning curve for me when I had to kind of change my workflow and try to accommodate a digital kind of way of working. Having worked on it for a bit, I'm not going to show you my first illustration whatsoever. I'm not going to embarrass myself that way. But the digital kind of spaces allowed some freedom into what I do and kind of pushes the boundaries. I think that world allows for so much freedom within what we do. You can kind of connect things that weren't previously there, and make this kind of new composition outside of, previously unrelated concepts. So I think that's for me is an interesting part. The fact that you can kind of control the artwork from start to finish and kind of change it whichever way. I think an upside for me, because I completely suck with color, I enjoy being able to kind of make those tweaks as I go. You don't want to get stuck with paintbrushes and so forth, that's great on its own, but I like to change and, evolve as I go. If you were to, for our purpose, if you were to imagine, creativity to be this room, right? If you were to imagine that creativity is a room and you go in there, you put a couple of things together, you go out into the world and you share what it is that you've created, and it might be beautiful, it might be the worst thing on earth, but I think creativity is exactly like that. There's no a formula. You go into that room as often as you want to go, you create as often as you want to go, and that's really what it is. It's a lot like life. As humanity, we get to have an active role, play an active role in what our lives look like. So that's what creativity is about. It's about going in there and taking those things that are essentially concepts at the start and making it a real thing and putting it out to the world. And I think that's one of the best things about it. It's like nothing on earth. You can take this thing that previously didn't exist and make it tangible. There's a direct proportion to how much you put in versus how much you get out. So what you put in is exactly what you get out. And the more times you put it in, the more times you get it out. Practice makes perfect, and that's the thing about art. Whatever art that you do, whether you're making music, whether you are illustrating, whether you're taking photographs, whether you're making movies, you just have to keep at it. Be your own biggest critic first before you let someone else be that. Because if you can look at a piece of work that you create and go, it's not right with this and that and that, then you kind of allow the space for you to get better. I think the world that we live in now, we're so used to instant gratification, and people have to like everything that you make, and that's not necessarily a true representation of the real world. It's okay to admit to yourself, hey, it's not that good. And sometimes you got it right and sometimes you didn't get it right. One of my favorite artists was saying, it never quite comes out the way that you imagine it. It either comes out better or worse. That's why we keep doing it. It's that thrill of not knowing that this is gonna come out as such or not. And sometimes I fail, many times. Sometimes I go, well, that didn't work out, or that was a bad idea. But that's a part of it. You keep going in and you keep going back and challenging yourself in new ways, and that's how you grow. I like to have an idea before I get into it, but then I'm always open to the idea evolving. I'm not one of those people that to get stuck in the initial idea. I think it's what I refer to as beautiful accidents, where you go, well, that wasn't expected, but this kind of adds to the piece of work that I'm doing. I think conceptualizing is important to spark the direction. Okay, this is where I'm going, this is what I need to respond to, and that's the problem I need to solve. But along the way, you make it, oh, okay, this adds to the solution. That's what I'm like. I'm always open, like right towards the finish line. I'm always open to evolving and adding to the solution and adding to the artwork and, evolving the work itself. We're fortunate in the creative industry to be honest in what we do, to make an honest living. I think it was Basquiat who said something to the effect of the work itself is a direct representation of the artist. It's their blood, sweat, and tears. So I think we're fortunate to be in that position in a world where a lot of people have to kind of sacrifice who they are and what they believe in. I think as artists, we're in a great space to kind of control and decide, and to a certain degree, what our narrative will be, what we're remembered as. To everybody that's coming in, or to everybody that's interested in becoming a part of the creative world, my advice is just to, just be honest with who you are and what you do. It's interesting because what we do is not one of those things that you can leave in a room and let it cook and let it do itself for X amount of time. We have to physically be there for the most part. We have to be there, and again, our own blood, sweat, and tears. We have to go in there, in that creative room, and make things happen as often as possible. Understand that honesty doesn't stop at, I'm not good at this. Honesty extends beyond that. It goes as far as, hey, but I'm willing to get better. It doesn't stop at, hey, I did a really bad attempt this time, I must not be good at this. And that's what I enjoy about the creative world. I think Africa is just so rich and has a lot of stories that are untold at the moment. I think for a long time, as Africans, we've let other parts of the world define what the narrative is, and you know what it's like you know, you watch a film, it's based on Africa, you're gonna see a lion, you're gonna see an elephant. And I'm not saying those things are not like real, but what I'm saying is Africa has a bigger story to tell, and I think that's the fun thing about it right now. We are potentially, or have the potential rather, to be at the forefront of telling our stories, and I love seeing the artwork that comes out of, you know, Africa. I love seeing, you know, the photography. I love seeing the illustrations, because it's almost like there's this 21st century awakening that's happened, you know, where all of these artists that I'm a fan of are coming out and doing amazing work. So I think, you know, what sets us apart is that fact that we haven't told our stories to completion. There's still so much to tell. There's still so much color. The process still begins on paper. You know, a lot of my artworks begin their lives on my moleskin. You know, so I'm still a big fan of sketching and getting that concept, initial idea across. I then scan that concept onto my laptop or my iPad, where I begin working on an app like either Photoshop, Illustrator, or Affinity Designer, which is what I use most of nowadays. I'll then show you like some of my examples here of some of the work that I'm working on. You guys get to give a sneak peek of the work. One of my newer pieces of work has been, you know, this illustration that I did a few months ago, but only kind of got into this inking phase and coloring in the last week or so. So I kind of like having artwork that is has some sort of duality to it. When you look at it, you see these scary elements, but then the color kind of draws you in, because the color is so overpowering. I don't want to make something that doesn't have any emotion behind it. I don't want to have a thing that people just experience and go, oh, well, it's another thing. I do want to move people in some shape or form.